Hello, world, and thanks for listening to Master English with Tim, the podcast where Tim helps you master English in depth and detail, and without ever hurrying. I'm Tim, writer, polyglot, world traveler, native speaker of English, English teacher since 2005, and podcaster since April of 2023. So, the last two episodes of my podcast were about the present simple. The first, which was episode 76, was about what the present simple means. The second episode, which was episode 77, was about all the details of that annoying little S or ES ending that sometimes is used with verbs in the present simple. One of the biggest difficulties that people face when they're learning English is how to make the different types of sentences. For example, negative statements and the different types of questions like subject questions and yes-no questions and WH questions. In this week's episode, I will talk about how to make all of these sentence types specifically in the present simple by using over 100 examples. This week's episode will also be a great review of these sentence types. By the way, this episode builds on what I talked about in episode 52 through 59, where I talked in detail about all of the auxiliary verbs. And it will also build on what I talked about in episodes 66 through 70, where I explained how to make the most important sentence types in the most important verb tenses. Now, let's get back to the present simple, though. All the different sentence types that we usually use in the present simple. And we will start with subject questions. Subject questions are questions where we don't know who did the action in the sentence, or sometimes we don't know how many people did the action. Subject questions are constructed just like statements, with a subject and then a verb. Here are 11 subject sentences with auxiliary verbs like be, can, and have or has got. Let's see. 1. Whose car is that? 2. Whose keys are these? 3. Who's in the bathroom? 4. Who has got the password? 5. Who here can speak Italian? 6. Who should pick up the pizza? 7. Which stores are open on Sundays? 8. What ingredients are in the soup? 9. How many people are in the office? 10. Who can help me move this weekend? 11th and last. How many grams of sugar are in a can of Coke? Okay, now we have 9 subject questions again, but this time with action verbs. First one. 1. Who needs help with their math homework? 2. $400? Who spends that much on a pair of shoes? 3. What happens if I forget my password? 4. Who here speaks Italian? 5. Who works on Sunday? 6. What kind of person treats their dog like that? 7. Who still watches movies in the theater? 8. Which countries drive on the left side of the road? 9th and last. Which of your brothers is the one who lives in California? Okay, we have a final variation on present simple subject questions. This is ones where we have the S ending on the end of the verb. I talked in detail about the S ending in episode 77. Here are 4 examples. 1. Who fixes your motorcycle for you? 2. Who chooses which days you work? 3. What makes you so sure that you're right? 4th and last. Who watches movies that are that stupid? Okay, let's move on to our next type of sentence. This is negative statements. Remember that negative statements always have the same formula or construction. That's subject, auxiliary, not, and verb. So that's SANV. Subject, auxiliary, not, and verb. Here are 10 negative statements with auxiliary verbs in them. I can't hear you. 2. No, I'm not angry. Don't worry. 3. Sorry, we're not interested. 4. You shouldn't drive so fast. 5. Sorry, we can't come to your party. 6. No, you may not go outside. 7. We can't afford to spend that much. 8. She might not want to come with us. 9. You shouldn't drive when you're sleepy. 10th and last. We haven't got enough time to make additional stops. Okay, so again, remember that negative statements always have the construction SANV. That's subject, auxiliary, not, and verb. If the sentence that we are changing into a negative statement doesn't have an auxiliary, then we need to add a form of do. So do is an auxiliary, and that's the auxiliary that we add when we don't have another auxiliary like can or be or must or should. So 7 negative statements with do. 1. I don't sleep well. 2. I don't call my friends after 8 p.m. 3. We don't follow professional sports. 4. They don't stop when they're driving. 5. They don't watch the same TV shows as us. 6. Sorry, we don't allow you to change your booking. 7th and last. She might not be interested, but you won't find out if you don't ask. Next, so sometimes we need to use does. We use does when the subject is he, she, or it, or an equivalent of he, she, or it. Again, I talked about this a couple episodes ago, one episode ago, when I talked about the S ending. So please note that after does, we use the base form of the main verb, not the S form. That's a very common mistake. People want to put the S on does and at the end of the verb. Don't do it. It's does plus the base form. Here are 6 examples. It doesn't snow much anymore. 2. James doesn't work here anymore. 3. It doesn't take long to learn English. 4. She doesn't listen to what anyone says. 5. My cell phone doesn't have any battery left. 6th and last. It doesn't get very hot here, even in the summer. Okay, now we can move on to the next sentence type, which is yes-no questions. We make yes-no questions with the formula ASV. That's auxiliary, subject, and verb. Here are 11 yes-no questions that start with an auxiliary like be, can, or have got. 1. May I ask a question? 2. Should I quit my job? 3. Are you from New York? 4. Is that guy your boss? 5. Are the bananas ripe yet? 6. Can you fix my car for me? 7. Should we buy a second car? 8. Should I bring a gift to the party? 9. Have we got any cheese in the fridge? 10. Have you got any money with you? 11th and last. Have we got enough time to pick up some food? Okay, if the sentence that we're changing into a yes-no question does not have an auxiliary verb, then we need to add the auxiliary do at the start of the sentence. So again, it's still the same formula, ASV, auxiliary, subject, verb, but the auxiliary is not like be or can or should, it's do. So here are 10 examples with do. 1. Do you feel okay? 2. Do you speak English? 3. Do we need to go now? 4. Do you play the lottery? 5. Do I have to pay with cash? 6. Do they know where to meet us? 7. Do your students learn quickly? 8. Do I have to get up early tomorrow? 9. Do you really think that's a good idea? 10th and last. Do our competitors know about our plans? Sometimes we need to use does. Now that happens again when the subject is he, she, or it, or an equivalent of he, she, or it. Please remember again that after does, we use the base form of the verb and not the S form. Here are 9 examples with does and the base form of a verb. 1. Does your baby crawl yet? 2. Does she know where to meet us? 3. Does this problem really matter? 4. Does our room have a smoke detector? 5. Does it get really hot where you live? 6. Does your brother have our address? 7. Does everyone understand the instructions? 8. Does your company provide you with insurance? 9th and last. Does the car have enough gas in it for the trip? Okay, so the last type of sentence that we'll do this week is WH questions. These are questions that start with question words like who, what, where, why, when, how much, how long, how far, how fast, and how many. WH questions have the same formula as yes-no questions, but they add a question word to the beginning. So our formula is QUASV, which is question word, auxiliary, and then subject, and then verb. As usual, let's start with some examples that use an auxiliary verb like can, be, or must. 11 examples. 1. How's your wife? 2. Why is the door unlocked? 3. When will he finish the job? 4. When can you come to visit us? 5. How much is the green motorcycle? 6. Where should we leave our things? 7. How many languages can Susan speak? 8. How far is your office from your house? 9. Why have you got so many pairs of shoes? 10. What do you want to do tomorrow afternoon? 11th and last. How many minutes is your office from your house? And as always, if the sentence we're changing into a WH question has no auxiliary, then we need to add do. So 6 examples with do. 1. Where do they live? 2. What does this thing do? 3. Which languages do they speak? 4. What does your company have to offer? 5. What do we need to get from the store? 6th and last. Who do they want to invite to the conference? Okay, and the final variation that we have is when the subject is he, she, or it, or an equivalent of he, she, or it. In that case, we use does. And again, please remember that with does, we do not put an S ending on the main verb. We use does plus the base form. Here are 9 examples. 1. How much does a haircut cost? 2. How hot does it get in the summer? 3. Why does it smell like smoke here? 4. How many languages does Susan speak? 5. How often does it snow in your city? 6. What kind of work does her husband do? 7. Who in our group of friends does she know? 8. Why does he always complain about everything? 9th and last. Who does she want to invite to her birthday party? Okay, that's all for the present simple. Next week we will move on to a new verb tense. Thanks for listening, everybody.